curse of natural resources, if you will look at economic history, you would see that countries with less natural resources, on the average, are doing better than countries with a lot of natural resources. If you look at countries like Nigeria, Angola, Middle East, all Arab countries, Russia, Venezuela, the countries are awash with natural resources. People are doing very poorly there. And look at the countries like Hong Kong, Singapore, Switzerland, Denmark, Sweden, Netherlands, no natural resources whatsoever, and people are living, people are thriving. I would say that that's what the mainstream economics is telling us, that it's the curse of natural resources, and sometimes. However, I would say that it's not that natural resources is cursed by itself. Look at the United States or Canada or Australia, to that matter, or South Africa, which are doing very well with their natural resources, only because their natural resources are privately owned. When you have government which is parasiting on natural resources, which is feeding off natural resources, then that government does not even consider people an asset at all. You see what I mean? Our government still depends on us for tax revenue. So for them, for people like Obama, Pelosi, and the likes, the idea of ruining the tax base is not very attractive, because they feed off this tax base. In the case, say, of Russia, when 85% of the feeder for the bureaucrats coming out of natural resources, which are government owned, so they don't care at all about people. I mean, why should they? Because the people just providing only 15% of tax revenue. I mean, who cares about them? And I remember I had even a discussion with a Russian diplomat in Washington Press Club on this. And after that, we were sitting there in a bar. He was a press attaché of Russian embassy. And he said, well, Yuri, this is just so strange what you're saying, or not. That kind of free market capitalism can be very nice, and you will be, because I made a point that he will live better, that even bureaucrats, even the government officials will live better if they would have a thriving economy rather than this neo-fascist kind of state, neo-fascist economy. And I said also that you can kill a chicken which would lay the golden eggs. And his point was it's nice to eat these eggs and the chicken. And then I said, well, look, I mean, Adam Smith, whatever, the size of the pie would determine each slice, the size of each slice. The bigger is the pie, each slice would be bigger. And his point was also, he said, Yuri, you just completely left our culture and our understanding of world. Wouldn't, he said, would be the increasing slice of diminishing pie be the most tasty? And so that's kind of the system, right? And people like Mr. Putin, not many people know much about him. Mr. Putin's grandfather was Stalin's personal cook. So it was the biggest probably job in the USSR, I mean, much bigger than Minister of Food or whatever. And so he was, his father was colonel of KGB, and Mr. Putin was a proud colonel of KGB, and Russian people made the same poor judgment as American people made in 2008, and they made this judgment in 2000, electing a proud member of the KGB. At that time, on the Libertarium RU, I published, that's the Russian Libertarian website. My last article in Russian was, had the title, Meat Voted for a Meat Grinder. So you can imagine if you elect after all these murders, after all this destruction, after all this, can you imagine in Germany today, if they would vote in any SS or Gestapo officer, that would be a national tragedy, and even as a dog catcher in a remote village. But But in Russia, the elected person who is proudly killed, he raised toast to Stalin in Kremlin. So that's kind of the insanity of the present world. And you can see that the United States right now, we have an anti-American in the White House. I think he hates his own country more than any other. And it was easy to understand why. I mean, it's not that if you will read, because most people didn't read his books. I think he doesn't make any secrets there. Especially in Dreams of My Father, he's just like, absolutely, yeah. I mean, I'm not sure who his father is, because, you know, on Netflix, if you haven't seen that, on Netflix, there's a documentary so-called, I don't know how documentary it is. It's called Dreams of My Real Father. Yeah, Dreams of My Real Father. And what's at least entertaining there, that it looks like his mother was a lover of Frank Marshall Davis, who was a card-carrying member of the American Communist Party. But and he was writing a lot of communist stuff, and he was the best buddy of Paul Robeson. Maybe you've heard of that, another Stalinist stuff. And Mr. Davis, his hobby as a Communist Party writer was to be a pornographer photographer. And so he was taking a lot of pictures of Obama's mother, which are uncensored there on Netflix. I even was surprised that Netflix was not shut down by any kind of SWAT team or whatever, or maybe NSA is just taking kind of notes who watches this or whatever it is. But that's entertaining, because they have this facial kind of look. He looks like one. I don't care who is his real father, to tell the truth, because both of his would-be fathers are both monsters. One is a Communist Party hack, and another was a wife beater and did a lot of drunk driving here and died in a catastrophe at home in Kenya, killing 2 people. So that's and again, I don't care whether where he was born or what he's doing. I mean, look what he's doing. What he is doing and the people around him. And if you will look, Dreams of My Father it looks like, written by Bill Ayers. Bill Ayers, at least, I don't know, maybe he was intoxicated or smoked weed, as he does usually. He spoke at the St. Montclair University in New Jersey. And I spoke there also, and they kind of, and that's where he said that I wrote Mr. Obama's books. Yeah, that's what he said. Maybe they had some kind of. I was there, it was amazing. Young Americans for Liberty organized a panel, and the panel, you wouldn't believe it, what kind of people we have in all kind of movements. There was one professor, Professor Furr. Professor Furr, he is a card-carrying member of the U.S. Communist Party. He wrote 17 books praising Stalin. He is tenured since 1970. He is destroying young minds. His major idea is that Stalin never killed anyone. And that was a mistake, because all these unkilled people badmouthed him. So that's sometimes you feel like you are in a kind of in a company which is smoking something really strong. Then we had a guy so-called conservative. I was libertarian. There was another guy, conservative from the King's University. He's a pretty nice guy, but then can you imagine? It's a libertarian crowd mostly. I think like 600 students, and they asked a question. They said, "Well, what do you think about legalizing drugs?" I said, "Well, I think drugs should be sold in drugstores and Walgreens, CVS, everywhere." And this Mr. Furr, he said, all drugs are produced by CIA. and that's why we invaded Afghanistan. When we needed some oil, we invaded Iraq. Then we needed some drugs, so we invaded Afghanistan. And I said, well, why do we need drugs? He said, to destroy minorities and progressives. And I was so surprised. I mean, I said, well, you mean that progressives and minorities are heavily on drugs? And, and he said, yes, they are, because of the CIA. Yeah. He heard that CIA is distributing free drugs in minorities' neighborhoods. And then, so you see this kind of very difficult to, and then this conservative folk is saying, I think that first time I agree with Dr. Furr that some people should not have access to drugs. That I agree with Dr. Maltsev. He said that drugs should be legalized, but not for everyone. Because some people are so bad, so stupid, don't have good judgment. And I said, well, how would you do that? And he said, well, maybe IQ. And can you imagine? And you have IQ, ID, and he said it can be, as an economist, he said you can even have kind of a sliding price rates. So, for example, you have a very high IQ, you have a discount. You have a very low IQ, you pay like twice more. And so this is just this life is all the time is a candy store. It's amazing that people, and Mr. Furr, that was very entertaining. But they told me there that Bill Ayers was probably under some influence because he was so vocal and so entertaining.